Got my notes. There we go. 5, 4, 3, 2. All right, Earnestly podcast here with old friends. It's been a while, a little over a year. I checked the stats. Apparently, last pod we did was June 9th. David Ramil, host Lock T podcast, is here. What's up, Dave?
Oh man, always great to talk basketball with you. It's been a while, but
Been a long time.
too long. But yeah, I really enjoy this. Thanks for reaching out, and I'm so glad we got a chance to finally connect.
Yeah. It's our annual State of the Heat podcast we do after each Heat season, which obviously went longer than we probably all thought it'll be this year. But at the same time, disappointing end to the year. I mean, perspective is disappointing in the moment, but obviously, if you're one game from the finals, it can't be that bad, right?
I am pretty disappointed. I
said
no, I am. Well, I look relative to expectations. I guess they met, maybe even exceeded them. Internally, the team says that they should have gone to the finals. That's the goal every year, is to win a championship, and I believe them. And they were this close, but they fell short. And I will tell you now, though, I don't give the Celtics much credit. Like they won, but I don't think they were significantly better. And I certainly, having said that before the series started, like people were kind of just dismissing Miami. It's like, have you seen the Heat play all season?
This is weird.
I didn't understand.
Weird. They got and they got a lot of breaks also too. Look, Boston, it is what you can't control the environment around you. It is what it is. If players get hurt on other teams, it is what it is. You can't control that, and you just take advantage of that. But they caught a lot of breaks. They caught a Brooklyn team that was, obviously the story of Brooklyn and where we are now with Brooklyn. Milwaukee losing Chris Middleton. I still say if Middleton plays that series, that they win in 5 probably. Yeah. So so they got some breaks here, obviously, but it is what it is. Let's go back a little bit before we get to the, obviously the present day. The Heat number 1 seed in the East this year. I believe they were 53-29, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Grade their year. What do you think overall, based on coming to the year, your expectations coming to the year, and then what came to be?
Well, I think they did an amazing job of weathering those challenges that you were just talking about, not just manifesting during the playoffs, but also during the regular season. The fact that they lost Bam for such a significant amount of time, that Kyle Lowry was missing, time due to personal reasons and injury, and Jimmy missed time, and it just seemed like they were always incorporating new guys in the rotation, and these guys that were not expected to perform anything or be productive or have impact minutes, and yet you had Max Strus, you had Caleb Martin, you had Gabe Vincent, et cetera, all finding a way to chip in. And I think they did a phenomenal job. And it showed the team's depth and versatility. And again, reinforces the fact that this team's development system is probably second to none across the NBA, that Eric Spoelstra continues to find a way to just get the most out of whoever's available on the roster. That next man up mentality, they certainly showed it, and they did a fantastic job. And I thought, again, that they maybe they exceeded expectations, but having said that, they still had a fantastic year, and I thought they were going to be able to make a run for the playoffs. I thought they were going to be able to go on a deep run. I wrote before the season in my season preview, I said, that I think they're going to be competing for a title, and certainly they were right up there. The expectations when they got Kyle Lowry was that that was the big name of free agency last year. It's like a lot of people, different teams were waiting for Lowry. He chose Miami, and all of a sudden people go, you got Jimmy Butler, you got PJ Tucker now. He comes to the team as well, and now all of a sudden you're building an older team, but one with championship experience, and
right.
They just weren't able to match the goals for this year. But having said that, still a very successful season overall.
And not as a title team, but guys have won titles recently. I mean, PJ Tucker won before this year. He won in Milwaukee. Okay. Kyle Lowry just won it the last title before the bubble. So these are guys who came in here with really fresh championship, experience. Of course. Now you mentioned, of course, obviously Bam missed some time this year. G Butler missed time this year. Am I on a place to say that Tyler Hero was the team MVP this year?
Ooh,
the guy won 6 man a year, 20 points a game. He was asked to, he had a great rookie year, bad sophomore year. He was asked to do more, put on some muscle, all that. He did all things he was asked for and then some.
All right, I'm gonna brush back that whole concept of bad second year. Like, he wasn't great, maybe, but it wasn't bad. Like, in fact, he actually wound up getting better in some statistical categories in the second season. There was just a lot of negative reporting about him, and I blame a lot of local media guys saying, the Heat front office, the Heat coaching staff don't know where Tyler's head at and whether or not he's focused on basketball, whether or not he's too interested in off the court stuff and building his brand and rather than continuing to grow as a player. I think a lot of that was overblown, and I can't accuse anybody of false reporting because certainly they vouch for their sources. But having said that, they were really painting a negative picture of who Tyler is, which one I disagree with, and I don't think the front office believed that either. And then in his third season, you're right, he was fantastic, sixth man of the year, as you pointed out, and he was their most consistent player. Maybe not their best player, which is why I'm kind of wavering about whether or not I should give him MVP, because Jimmy was clearly the best player. Bam was fantastic defensively all year long, but Tyler just his scoring was so vital to this group, and they struggled with him struggling in the playoffs when he wasn't able to produce the way he had during the regular season, when he was, cut down by Boston's defense and they made him a target defensively. Like, you could tell that this team struggled to find their identity. If not for those fantastic performances by Jimmy, who knows? But as far as the regular season, MVP, I could see it. I think that's pretty fair, man, to be honest with you.
Yeah, because again, we said, I'm not saying that he was the best player on the team. Obviously, that's Jimmy in a landslide. Yeah. He's not even the second best player on the team. That's Bam. But remember the stretch early in the year where both guys are out for at least a month, and the Heat still maintained their standings in the Eastern Conference, in a conference that was really good this year. By the way, we had teams like Philadelphia had a good year this year. I mean, Brooklyn started well until Durant got hurt and Kyrie stuff, and everything else. Milwaukee, of course. The Heat sustained this without those guys in a time where the East, and basketball history, the East has not been good like this in decades. We're talking decades. So to me, I get here a lot of credit for just being the number one guy when they need him to step up, and he stepped in a big way. Obviously, it was disappointing having the playoffs, but and we'll get to that in a second, especially with Tyler Hero and what he should do going forward. So we're here now in the offseason, obviously, and the Heat have made pretty much just two moves of significance to me. I'm surprised, first off, that they re-signed Victor Oladipo.
Yes,
I'm surprised he was actually available like this. 1 year though. No teams out there for even 2-3 years.
I don't think he wanted to. I think the numbers, as far as maybe he could have gotten 3 years for a comparable amount. Let's say 3 years for 30. Maybe some team on the lower end of the spectrum in terms of wins might have thrown him a lot of money, but that's not the kind of money he's looking for. He thinks that this is going to be another prove-it year for him. Yeah. And having said that, he puts up the numbers that he thinks he can put up. Whether he competes for a starting job with Tyler or whoever Miami happens to acquire remains to be seen. But let's just assume that he's going to be competing for a starting job. If he puts up the numbers he thinks he will, then he thinks he's going to get paid probably closer to 15 to 20 a year for a multi-year contract.
I was surprised because I thought he would have gotten that now, honestly, because
would you have thrown that kind of money at him? Because I think he was a bit of an overpay. Yeah,
but as we say though, we have a lot of stupid teams in the league. There are teams that are just dumb. They just do dumb things, and you can't give too much credit to the teams that not do that. But I thought his playoff run, especially late, especially defensively too. Yes. That some teams might have got, maybe he is back. So let's offer him a 3-year, $45 million. Something of that nature. You know what I mean? Yeah. I'm surprised that Miami got back for 1 year. I'm very happy it happened because at least if they don't get Durant, we'll talk about in a second. That at least you have at least a team that we can bring back that's at least compete in the East going forward. So sure. I'm glad I got another year and hopefully another prove year for him. He's still young. He's 30 years old, 29, 30 years old.
I think he is 29 actually.
So he's young. He still has time. He can still get another big. Let's say that what we saw in the playoffs, he has a full offseason now to get himself back in shape. Because he came back late in the year. Right. And he has a very good year. There will be a team or two that, maybe more, that will probably offer him what he was looking for. Yeah. Maybe it's Miami. Who knows?
Oh.
Doubt it, but maybe it's Miami. Who knows? I know. That's what I said. It's like, I don't know. That's
you're paying Kyle a lot of money, you're paying Bam a lot of money, you're paying Jimmy a hell of a lot of money. So I don't know how much funds can be.
Well, you already know how I feel about Kyle's contract. I already said to you about Kyle's contract that I like Kyle Lowry, but that money, when I saw the contract last year, like I had to really I would have rather had Goran back on a cheap, honestly.
Ooh, yeah. I
get it.
He's not that player anymore, and Kyle. I think the personal things off the court that really sapped away a lot of what his impact could have been. But I think we're kind of like, we've all, not you and me personally, but I think
Right.
a lot of Heat fans are like, they've swung on the other side of the pendulum now, where they're really upset with Lowry because he wasn't putting up monster numbers, which never has been the strength of his
No.
game. He's a playmaker. He sets the table. He makes plays defensively, and we saw that during the playoffs. He was just hurt too.
Right.
And everybody's already kind of overlooked and forgotten that, and just says, "Oh, he's a bum. He's washed. You get him off my team, etc." I don't know. I still think Pat Riley's comments in his end of the season press conference about getting Kyle back in world class shape, I think it's going to make a huge difference. I think he's going to bounce back in a big way and be a much more productive player, and hopefully play closer to 65, 70 games over the course of the regular season.
And not for nothing too. Also, when he was available during the regular season, he actually was pretty good. He wasn't that bad. He was really good. He got hurt in the first round of playoffs at Atlanta, the hamstring injury, which obviously lingered all the way through. And he had moments too, even in the Celtics series, where like was it game 3 or game game 6 definitely was the Jimmy game. I know Jimmy gets all credit for the game 6 game, and he should. But Kyle Lowry had a great game too, also in that game that helped us sustain another game there. So I mean, I get the anger towards Lowry and the weight issues, all that, but he did when he was healthy, was available. He was able to produce. So let's get another year and see how this works out. The other guy, of course. Obviously, people are going to say, well, that's not a big deal, but I actually like the way David Ramil. I don't know how you feel about it, but I think you get a little bit again, a guy that's more of a standard old school center, that you can put in there when you need to, depending on the matchup. And I 2 years, $9 million.
Yeah,
I mean,
it's not. And maybe it doesn't seem like much. And look, my co-host Wes Goldberg has said on the show that the Depot deal, the Dedmon deal, both of them share something in common, kind of similar to what we saw when Pat gave James Johnson, Dion Waiters, Kelly Olynyk, everybody these kind of 4-year deals for like middle type money, not big money and not too small money like Gabe or Max Strus. Stackable contracts that you can put in a package for another player, whether it's not now, obviously, because they just signed a contract, but let's say middle of the season trade deadline or something like that, you want to swing a trade for a superstar. These are the kinds of deals that you need. That you can include with, say, Duncan Robinson's bigger salary, so that you can get a better, a superstar who makes a lot of money in order to make the numbers match. And that's where I think Dedmon kind of fits in line. Like, I don't think he was going to command $9 million on the open market. I'm a little surprised that Miami threw that much money at him. I think they like Dwayne, but we also saw that he's kind of unplayable. He's still foul prone, and that's not going to change because that's just been something consistent with him throughout his whole career. And so, he gives effort. There's the rebounding side of it. And yes, the three-point shooting, an occasional, three-pointer here and there is not really a threat, but still the possibility of him knocking down that shot.
Right.
I think they like what he brings to the table, but the $9 million seems really excessive. Like they were kind of just bidding against themselves in order to package his deal down the road somewhere else for a trade. So that's how the only way I can see it. I just don't. Do you think he's an impact player? Because I don't see it necessarily.
I do actually. I know when at least during the year anyway. I felt like when he was in the game, he was always doing something positive. I always felt like he was, because obviously Bam's the guy. But when you throw a guy that's more of a, old school center, defensive guy, he was pretty good. I thought in moments when he came in the game, he spelled minutes for Bam pretty well.
Yeah.
I actually didn't want to lose. Obviously, I want to pay for the guy, but I didn't want to lose the guy. I thought when we needed him in moments, he showed up.
That's fair.
And obviously, in playoffs, he didn't play much because the matchups didn't really. I mean, B destroyed his ass obviously in the second round, but but moments in the year, 82 games sample, when he's needed, obviously he showed up, and that's all I can ask for in that moment. Elephant in the room, though, Duncan Robinson. Obviously, everybody assumes to be traded this year. I'm gonna go the other way. I think he'll be in uniform at the start of this year. Start next year, I'd say.
Yeah, I guess that kind of answers our question, or the question we're going to ask later on, whether or not they're going to swing a trade for KD or somebody else.
But let me ask this first, though: can he be rehabbed though? Because he presents us the one thing he does very well, obviously, as a shooter. He's one of the best in the league.
Yeah.
So there's value there, obviously.
Sure. I think it's also a matter of how you play. Like he seems like he kind of like dominates the offense has to run through him in a way that it shouldn't for a role player, and that's because
Right.
he's his own limitations and his inability to create his own shot. So he's going to have to constantly try to keep running around off multiple screens in order to get
Yeah.
an open look because he's not able to get that separation from defenders, and they're going to close out on him because they respect him. And the way that does create gravity for everybody else. So there's a positive impact from what he's able to do. But in terms of his own individual production, that's going to continue to struggle
Right.
because you have to just bend the offense in order to get these kind of high screen and roll actions with him or these triple handoffs with Bam, et cetera. And then that kind of just bogarts the offense. It slows
Hmm.
it down a little
Yeah.
bit. And we saw during the playoffs in particular, that works at some point. And but Max doesn't need plays run for him. That's the whole thing.
Right.
It's like they did it on occasion, but Strus is better off ball than Duncan is, and that's a big surprise to me. And I know he's maybe a little bit more athletic than Robinson, but I was a little surprised to see him be able to take such a big separation between what he provides and what
Yeah.
Duncan provides.
And
And
as a
so,
defender too, also as a
yeah,
defender.
when that improved. Like I'll go on the record as saying it. I've said it many times. Duncan Robinson was the better individual defender and the better team defender at the start of the season, which is why Max wasn't getting those minutes. But Max got better. Like he made the
Yeah.
effort, and he did a great job, multiple efforts defensively, quicker hands, moving into position. There were moments at the start of the season where he was like lost, where he was just away from the play and somebody would drive past him, not for a lack of effort, but just a lack of experience. As he got better throughout the course of the season, then you go, oh, well, that's why he's starting over Duncan Robinson. So I'm just not sure if there's another leap that Duncan can take. Like I'm a believer personally, but it's going to be hard to see how it manifests. He's going to need more opportunity, and I don't know that he's going to necessarily beat out Tyler or Victor or Max
Hmm.
Strus for a
Right.
starting job. And having said that, you've got like this glut at that position. What do? You need the depth, obviously, because somebody in that lineup is going to get hurt at some point, but he's not going to get the kind of playing time where he can effectively show that he's worthy of being a rotation player. So getting paid the kind of money he does. And look, the Heat doesn't
Right.
care. Like Spo doesn't care. He's not like, oh, I'm paying you this much money or the team's paying you this much money. You're going to get this minutes. No, no. If
That's
you're not
clear.
out there, yeah, if you're not that out there, you're not producing. And if you're not great defensively, you're not going to get any burn. And that's just the way it is. So I just don't know. And maybe he gets traded. Maybe he doesn't. I think they still like him. And I
Oh
think they
yeah.
still believe in him, but they want something more than what he was showing last season.
So reel me this then. The Atlanta series, game one, he has what, 8 3 pointers in that game?
Yeah, 27 points, wasn't it? Something
Yeah.
like that.
He has a fantastic game, career night. Game two, I don't think he plays a single minute in that game.
Maybe like a little bit at the end of the second or
Maybe
something
two
like that.
minutes. Yeah, maybe some like garbage time minutes. What's Spo thinking? Was he experimenting at the time? Was that what was Spo thinking? I still don't get that.
I don't either. They were missing some players maybe, and they were like, "Oh, let's just put Duncan out there, see what he can do," and he does it. But ultimately, I guess they just went away from it. I don't look. Spo's a big like behind the scenes guy, and I've said this on the show before. Like,
Mhm.
the work that you put in behind the scenes, he puts a lot of stock in that, and that's why James Johnson and Dion fell out of favor. That's why Kelly Olynyk saw his minutes go up and down during his tenure here. And I remember talking to Kelly about it. He's like, "Yeah, it makes it really hard because you never know what's going to happen, but you just have to continue putting in the work, and you hope they see it." And I guess that's kind of where Duncan is, where he's just like he
Right.
has to keep putting in the work, and then Spo will finally say, okay, he's earned he's earned his opportunity or something
Right.
to that effect. So I don't know. I don't know what he was thinking either, because I mean, maybe it was just a night where he gets hot, and I think he kind of dismissed it that way. It's like, oh, Duncan was hot in game one, but we needed something different. We needed
Mhm.
different looks, et cetera, and that's why he went with a different rotation. So and he busted him out on occasion here and there throughout the rest of the playoffs, but not nearly enough. Where he could have been an impact player. Where Miami was struggling so much from three,
Yeah.
especially against Boston's good perimeter defense, and you hope a guy like Duncan who doesn't need that much to get going. Like if he sees that first shot fall, the next six could fall after
Yeah.
that. That's just the way he is. So you wonder why he couldn't get any kind of opportunity. And I know you would have given up something defensively, but hey, why
Yeah.
not roll him out there and see what you got?
Right. Okay. We waited long enough for this one.
Oh,
Let's discuss it. Kevin Durant.
yep.
Obviously, we last Thursday that was the report. Durant wants out of Brooklyn. What a mess. First off, what a mess. Um, the report is that he has two teams on his mind that he wants to go to. Phoenix being one, and the Miami Heat, of course. And let me hear your analysis on this with Kevin Durant. Can he get him? Give me some percentages here. Is this possible?
Yes, I don't know how likely it is. Like at this point, I think Miami hasn't moved on, but I think they've kind of seen enough where they realize that it's not very likely. Like something's going to have to give, and a big part of that is the fact that your best tradable asset aside from Tyler Hero is Bam Adebayo, and you don't really want to move him. And reports are that KD doesn't want him moved, that he'd want him on the
He
roster.
made a
If
reason why he
anything,
come in the first place. Yeah.
yeah, there's a connection there through Team USA, mutual respect and everything else like that. Like Bam's that guy, All Stars and stuff like that. So I, I don't think you'd want to move Bam, even if you could facilitate a three-team deal. And that's really your best bet of piling together enough young players like Duncan and Tyler and the kind of assets they're looking for in terms of first-round picks and things of that sort that might be able to change them. If we just saw, we're in a world where Rudy Gobert, great player, great defensive player, obviously, is getting 6 first-round picks in exchange for his services. And that might, that's a hell of an overpay.
Remember talking about dumb teams?
Yeah. Minnesota
That's a dumb team. Minnesota's a dumb team.
They're a believer, man. Like they really think that's going to pay off. And I'm just like, I don't know. I mean, I'll be happy to eat crow if it does, but man, that's a lot to give up. And me, I'm never really like, oh, you got to mass draft picks. You got to mass draft picks. No, if you can get your star, get it. But it's Rudy Gobert. And yeah,
That's
he
the
makes
thing.
up for, yeah. He's going to help out with, Karl Anthony Towns' defensive issues. That's fine. But man, he's still going to be kind of unplayable. Like they still need to improve their perimeter defense too. Like I mean, he's just not going to be enough. You can make him the anchor of your defense, but he's not going to solve every problem defensively that you have. So we'll see how it pans out. I think it's an experiment. It's a gamble. We'll see how it pays off. I know the Wolves fans are excited about it. We'll see how it works out. As for the Heat, I don't know. Their pursuit of Kevin Durant is real. They'd love to be able to get him. I think they'd love to be able to make it happen if they could build a deal around Tyler Hero. Having said that, I don't think it's likely. Like even the odds right now, and Vegas knows everything, as you know. They've got Miami third behind Toronto and Phoenix. So despite the preferred team selection, it looks like Toronto might be able to offer more in terms of young players and assets in order to pry him free out of Brooklyn. So we'll see what happens.
But KD, I don't know. Brooklyn has all the leverage here. That's the thing. It's not like a situation where KD has, one more year to go. And then, we're going to trade him out for nothing. No, KD has another 4 years of his contract.
Yep.
So Brooklyn, if they want to send him to Sacramento, they can do that. Now, obviously, they're going to probably work with him, obviously, because I think they don't want to have the bad PR with this. They're having like a training players somewhere you want to go and then, all that. But Toronto has lots of pieces, though, too. I saw a report today with the rookie of the year, Scotty Barnes, was rumored and all that. Phoenix is interesting too, though, because the DeAndre Ayton part is the one that's actually the key. By the way, let me ask you this: DeAndre Ayton, haven't heard a word about anything on Ayton in 6 days. What's going on there?
It's just a matter of, I mean, there's still teams with cap space. It looks like, from what I'm hearing, that the reality is that any other team that doesn't have the cap space would have to kind of facilitate some sort of sign and trade. From Ayton's part, I don't think he necessarily wants to help Phoenix out that much.
Yeah, and that's the other angle too.
Yeah, he kind of feels screwed over too. And then on the flip side, when you talk about him in context of the Kevin Durant trade, like Brooklyn's saying, well, we really don't want Ayton. It's like, wow, okay, that's kind of a bold decision. But here they are. They don't want Ayton either. So, like, what are you going to get in exchange from Phoenix? Yeah, you're going to have to, put other picks together, other young players.
Right.
Maybe you can make it happen, but you can't include Devin Booker. Again, that's another one of those names. That's the reason why he didn't want to come to Phoenix in the first place, to play alongside Booker. So, it's a challenge there. It's a challenge there. So even while Brooklyn does have the leverage in terms of like they don't have to send him anywhere, it's not like every team can facilitate this sort of trade. Like it's a very specific group of teams that could put something together that makes sense for Brooklyn's timeline and that makes sense for KD's as well. And I think Miami's certainly at the top of the list or close to at the top of the list.
So that being said, another name has been popping up last really longer than a couple weeks. Donovan Mitchell.
Yep.
I've heard a report from Fibers and Sports last week. The Heat offer him, I don't know, kind of offer him something. I know he got from a contract. He's on the contract already, but basically offer a deal.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's true or not. I believe those guys. We'll see what happens. To me, that seems more realistic for the Heat.
Yeah. Our point on the podcast is that market's even drier than Kevin Durant's. Like, you don't see a lot of teams saying, "Oh, we want this kind of." inefficient young player and we're going to mortgage our future. Like the teams that might need him, there aren't that many of them, and the ones that don't have the kind of packages together. He doesn't necessarily fit their timeline either.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know that they necessarily want to invest in a player like that. It kind of feels like Miami's bidding against themselves and kind of being patient. Now the Gobert trade kind of changes things around because
Yeah, I agree.
you think it's the first step of a rebuild, right? And then they say, no, we want to rebuild around Donovan. It's like, do you really? That one's even more peculiar. Like I don't.
But wasn't it important though that Gobert and Mitchell did not get along?
Yeah.
And so either one or the other had to go, and now Gobert's gone for a mountain of picks and all that.
And so how do you convince your young superstar, and I think he fits that, let's say he's young all-star, not superstar. But anyway, your young all-star, it's like, hey, yeah, we just sent out Rudy. We're going to blow up this team. We're going with a first-year head coach. Just hang tight. In 4 or 5 years, I swear we'll be competitive. Like, does he want that? Like, we're seeing what's happening with Bradley Beal in Washington, where, yeah, he's getting paid. He's been getting paid. But they haven't done a lot of winning there. It's like that's basically what you're condemning Donovan Mitchell to do, is like not a lot of winning. You're going to go through a rebuild. You're probably not a playoff team next year. Is that really something that he wants to stick around for? So I'm a little surprised that we haven't publicly heard about him making a trade request. And I also don't necessarily believe that Utah is not willing to trade him and just get a head start on that rebuild, particularly when you consider that Danny Ainge was a believer in what Tyler Hero could do prior to the draft. Like he thought Miami wasn't going to draft Hero, and they wanted him in Boston. They thought he was going to be a great fit there to complement them as off the bench scoring, et cetera. And then Miami, of course, wound up selecting him first. So if he's got a chance to acquire Hero again in a trade for Mitchell, and again, he can restart that rebuild, get a couple more draft picks, a couple more young players in exchange, I don't see why they wouldn't go that route. That's where I think everything's going to wind up shaking out, is that KD's just going to be off the table. He's either going to go to Phoenix or Brooklyn's just going to stall, and Miami can't just afford to wait any longer.
Right.
And they'll just figure out a way to sell Danny Ainge on the idea of a total rebuild. So that's another interesting name there. I think that's the one that's, like you said, much more likely to happen for the Heat.
My fear, though, is that, in my opinion, I think Mitchell's reached his ceiling. Like, I don't think it's going to get better than he is now. That's kind of where I'm at. So, obviously, any piece like that is going to involve Tyler Hero being moved also.
Yeah.
Can I argue Tyler Hero as a right now, only because he's only 3 years in the league, I can argue Tyler Hero has a larger ceiling, that maybe it's worth investing in Tyler Hero for cheaper than Mitchell, that may not get better.
Yeah, I think
that's where my head's at on that whole thing.
Look, I guess it's the athletic potential that Mitchell has, but like he's certainly a more high usage player. Athletically, he's better than Tyler. Not a better shooter. He's just had the ball in his hands. He's more inefficient. So that's why the numbers are there. But I think they're believers, and maybe I'm wrong about this, but my feeling is that they're believers in him, his youth, his closeness in terms of like his overall game to Dwayne Wade. I think they see him being a great complement alongside Jimmy and Bam as a building block for the future. I think they're believers in Tyler, and certainly I think they'd be fine keeping Tyler long term also. But I think they just see that Mitchell could be a better player. Like they think his ceiling is higher than Tyler's, and that he's a little further along, and that even though he's like a little bit more inefficient, that he can tighten those things up internally once he joins Miami's front team.
What do you think, though?
I guess I'm kind of I don't know. It's tough. It really is tough. Like I like Donovan. Like I just personally like Donovan, despite all the bad shots and everything else. And
yeah,
he totally hijacks the offense. And like Jazz fans are like, oh, what the? Like there's so many games that they lost just because he went like 0 for 7 and key moments and things of that sort. Like you don't necessarily want that player. But then again, like he also was exploited defensively. We saw that a lot in the playoffs. Like he was targeted, and for good reason. He's just not very good defensively along the perimeter. And I think it's more of an effort thing for whatever reason than an ability thing. Like he understands things well enough. He studies film. He's smart. Certainly, I don't see why he just can't apply himself defensively. At this point, I think. I don't know. I'm torn. I think you're right. Tyler fits better in terms of like his contract, and he's really good already. Like maybe he's 95% the player that Donovan is.
But 10 million, possibly 10 million less.
Yeah. I mean, it's hard. Yeah. And then you take away whatever cap space you might have with Donovan Mitchell's contract, and you're basically
Exactly.
locked into this team for the perpetuity of those contracts,
Right.
and that's not a great place to be. Tyler, like if he takes a step down, and maybe that's another thing, is like maybe they do finally sour on him and say, oh, he's not getting any better. We're not quite sure what's the next step for him. And they find, then he's still more movable at that price tag than Donovan Mitchell would be. So I don't know. They're kind of committing themselves to Donovan one way or the other. I'm torn here. I think he's a better player. I think I think Tyler might be a better fit in terms of just the contract and what he brings to the table.
How much is it going to hurt? How much does PJ Tucker move in Philadelphia hurt?
A lot. I think he's just a guy that. Have we ever seen anybody fit in so well in 1 year as PJ Tucker? Like, I mean,
amazing.
He fans wanted to put his jersey in the rafters, and just that kind of tough guy mentality, and he just brought it all the time. Even when he had a bad game or whatever, he was always going to bring the effort. That was for sure. Having said that, at 3 years at $30+ million, that's a hell of a lot.
$34 million. I saw the last number that came out.
Yeah,
I'm okay with him going, and I love him. But
yeah, I know it's tough.
He's 37 years old. People forget that he's 37 years old. You might get one more year of that contract. And the thing is, too, also, if he has a big fall after next year, he still has 2 years left in his deal, guaranteed. Yep. We can't get out of that contract.
Yep.
So
he could get hurt too. I mean,
yes.
You're kind of banking on him being able to step it up in the playoffs, but at 38, injury is a lot more likely than it was a couple of years ago. And you never want to wish that on anybody, but that's just the reality too. And look, you just played this game with Tyler and Donovan Mitchell, but let's say KD goes to Phoenix. All of a sudden, there's a player on that roster who becomes expendable. Jay Crowder, you welcome him back to Miami. I mean, is that really like a significant loss, a downgrade from PJ Tucker to Jay Crowder? Because I don't think it is. I think Jay could thrive in Miami the way he did a couple seasons ago. Mm-hmm. So if you're able to pry Crowder away, and let's say you swing a trade for Donovan Mitchell, you're right back in it. I think it's a retooled roster that got younger and I think better at the same time. So I think there's options there for Miami. We're kind of in this holding pattern, and it kind of makes it difficult because not even just from a content perspective, it's like, oh, what do we talk about? But also just watching the team, you're like, do something, make something happen, especially from this team has always historically been so active in free agency. And yet here we are. Caleb Martin still kind of floating in the abyss there, unsigned because they don't know what to do until something shakes free from either Brooklyn or Utah. They don't know what's next, and so that's why they can't offer him a contract.
Basically on the holding pad right now.
Yep.
So I know this is way, 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 way too early. We're in July, obviously. But right now, this Heat roster currently constructed, where's this team stand in the East right now?
A step back. I think that's pretty obvious. You have to hope for a couple of things. Three things, let's say. That PJ's absence isn't going to hurt you too bad, and I don't think it does. Like, he played a lot, and he had good games here and there. The effort's always there, the fit's always there. But if you can get a decent replacement, it's not that bad a loss. You're also hoping for significant improvement from Bam Adebayo and Kyle Lowry, and I think that's where the heavier risk is. Like, does Kyle bounce back? Does he get into that world-class shape that Riley wants him to? And does Bam take another leap offensively so that he can be more aggressive? And it just feels like we're in like year 3 of saying be more aggressive, be more aggressive. At some point, he just has to. Like, there's no knock. You or I won't possibly ever knock, Bam's impact in every other aspect of the game. As a playmaker, as a defender, elite. And yet, as an offensive player, like, there's still moments where you go, I know you can do more. Why aren't you doing it? And a lot of that has to do with, his just level of aggressiveness. I think that maybe that's an oversimplified way of doing things. But to answer your question, I think they're, probably a middle of the rung East team, because you've got Milwaukee that got better. You've got, Philadelphia that got better. Boston got better by a large margin too, and they were already pretty good. So
that Brogdon trade is huge.
I think he's
Yeah,
I think he's going to be a great fit there.
I think that might have solidified them as the best team in the East. Could be, other than Milwaukee.
Yeah.
But that was a move I was saying for weeks, that to get a big player, just get a capable point guard that can run an offense that allows Jaylen Brown to actually,
not handle the ball.
Not dribble the ball anymore. I'm saying, seriously, that changes everything for them. So I put them like Miami at 4 now in the East, ceiling at 4. which is fine, But
I mean, and you have to assume that maybe Atlanta doesn't get much better. Who knows how the DeJounte Murray fit will be there.
it's a good move though.
Yeah, it's okay. Like I'm not I like Murray. I just don't know why you want to swing for the fences and get Murray alongside Trae Young. It's like what is it that you're trying to accomplish? And you lose Kevin Herter, and maybe he's not that great a loss, but you still got John Collins there. Like what's happening? You still got Clint Capella. It's like they kind of capped themselves off, and I don't know that they're necessarily
it's disjointed roster. Disjointed roster.
Yeah, it feels all over the place. So I mean, they could get monster production from some players, and then certainly challenge Miami. It kind of feels like Miami regressed a little bit the same way they did following their run in the bubble, where they had an opportunity, but they were kind of saving all their ammo for Giannis, and then Giannis signs that super max, and then it's like, oh, okay, well, we don't have much option. Let's bring in Mo Harkless, and it's like, oh.
Giannis, Mo. Giannis, Mo. I mean, really.
Talk about your downgrades. That's certainly a big one. So yeah, I don't know. It's like if you can pull off the superstar trade for KD or Donovan, then all of this is moot. Yeah. But unless that happens, then I just don't know what's the positive takeaway from the offseason other than just banking on internal development.
Right. Two more questions. Let's go. Two more questions. So what the NBA as a whole? What stood out to you so far in free agency? What moves like whoa, this could be a game changer or whatever?
Oh, that's a tough one because there weren't any kind of like big names, right? Like Denver got a little better. I think that was a winner in free agency so far. I'm trying to think off of the other teams that I listed as winners there. Let's see. Oh, Boston certainly. Chicago got a little better. The Clippers got better. I think that's an option there. And then it's like the big name in free agency was Jalen Brunson. And I mean, I like Jalen's impact. I like him, as a player. It's just like, it just feels like odd that New York is saying, no, this is our guy. We're going to risk tampering charges. We're going to throw $100+ million.
That's weird. I get, that whole part too. Like you're going to risk tampering charges on that.
Like, I mean, he's certainly the winning lineage and everything else like that. He won at Villanova. He's just a big shot kid. He's got that toughness, that dog in him that everybody likes. And New York's going to love him, but they're also going to crucify him when he doesn't have a 40-point game. And,
exactly.
They're struggling. And if he gets hurt under Tibbs too, forget about it. Like, now he'll get run out of town the same way Julius Randle was. Like everybody loved Julius when he was an all-star last year. Not so much. So that's a very fickle town, as you
all the span of a year. All the span of a year.
Yeah,
that's crazy.
Yeah.
The Knicks are going to nick as they always do.
Bing bong, bing bong,
bing
baby.
bong. Last question, and I've been asking a lot of my people, all guests on the show, the last couple weeks about the legacy of Steph Curry. The top 10 argument and all that. Where are you on that? Because, I was before he won the title this year. I was like, he possibly could crack it. I think he'd crack it. And then he had the series he did. Obviously, winning the Finals MVP was not a surprise, but having the series that he had and the way he played, to me, he's checked all the boxes for me of a guy. When I look at top 10 guys, you do this, you have this impact. He checks all the boxes for me at this point. Yeah. Where are you on a Steph Curry argument? Is he top 10 player all the time?
I think so. I don't think there's any doubt about it. Just like you said, like I think when you're getting into that category. The one thing that they all share, like different approaches, Kareem skyhook, Michael's fadeaway, whatever, and yet like they changed the game, right? The way that you approach, they either brought a level of athleticism that hadn't been seen before, or they were just so dominant in a way that Bill Russell and Kareem were that changed the game. Now you're looking at Steph and what he's able to accomplish. Like the league as a whole has changed. Like not even the league. Basketball across the planet is a different sport because of Steph Curry. And that might be the single-handed most powerful argument in his favor as a top 10 player is that the game forever is changed now in terms of the three-point line and where kids shoot from and everything else like that. They're watching Steph Curry and there's a belief that they can do what he does. And I know a lot of old head coaches are going to be like, oh, that, we don't want that approach. It's here. It's gone. This is the new way of playing.
It's here, and he's won with it, and he's won titles with it too in the process. Like, what are we doing here now?
Right. So I think like the league has changed because of him, and he's a phenomenal player. He's been as good now as he was 6 years ago. He's different in many ways. He's improved defensively. You can't just target him the way that you once did. Yep. Like, what else is there to say about his level of play? Like, he's as good as you're going to get. And he's a dominant force on a really, really good dynastic team. And having said that, like that's your credibility right there. It's like that team's a dynasty. Kevin Durant was on that team. They won with him. They've also won without him, and I think that's where the credit belongs in Steph Curry.
Oh, I've always said that recently too. The comp with Steph Curry, especially, is to me is Tim Duncan. Stability. Just the stable, the guy on one team, just the environment. Everybody is better around you.
Yeah.
Never issue off the court. He just uplifts players. He's a guy that never has issues with teammates. You bring KD, no big deal. KD, you're the guy. You're the guy. You know, to me, it's like he checks every single box you ask for a top 10 player. Yeah. That's why I don't know why people even push back on this. And he could do this again next year. And I think the top 10 thing now is like we could be talking about this guy being maybe not top 5 yet, but inching closer to top 5 status, because now you get into you get 5 rings now.
Yeah.
You know, now you're in the Kobe argument and the Duncan argument now, and where I have Kobe at 8 and Duncan 7 on my list, and I mean, and then you have the longevity argument now with him.
Do you have a top 10 like off the top of your head?
Oh yeah, easy. I'll tell you right now. I mean, the Curry thing I'm still kind of working on a little bit, but he's 10 right now. Jordan, LeBron, Kareem, Magic, Wilt, Russell, Duncan, Kobe, Bird, and Curry. It was Shaq. Shaq.
But the longevity factor for him, I think, takes it out, right?
Yeah. I did eyeball a couple of guys. I looked at into taking out the top 10. I eyeballed Wilt for a little while, just cause 2 titles. But again, that era, you're playing against 6 Hall of Famers. I mean, you're gonna do, and he still almost beat them. With 6 Hall of Famers. I looked at taking out Bird because because the only thing Bird that hurts Bird is the lack of longevity. After year 8, his back went out.
Yeah,
he was done. And then Shaq, of course.
Curry's never going to get that recognition. Like, it's going to be hard for him as a top 10 player. Like, we're starting to see it. If you want to give credit to the 3-point revolution and things of that sort, that he was a perfect player for the right time when the 3-point shot was expanding its importance and the understanding of its impact. But as a top 5 player, he's never going to get that recognition. And I think part of it is what I was talking about. Like he's changed the game, but he's not such a dominant physical force. And I think that's still how so many people view players. Like Jordan was just unstoppable, right? An assassin, but also dunking over everybody. Like he ushered in a new era. And Magic at 6'9" revolutionized the idea of what a big man was. Like, he's not a big man. He's a guard who happens to be in the body of a big man.
Right.
Kareem certainly, Wilt certainly. Like, you can make the same argument. Like, Kareem was much a finesse player, but also tough as nails and dominant for so long. What was it, 18 seasons in between MVP candidacy? Like, I mean, something ridiculous like that. Just the idea that he was so good for such a long time, but Steph, like, it's a 3-point shot, right? Like, it's dismissive. It's like, oh, you don't draw any contact. You're not.
Which is strange because that shot actually is actually more points on the board than the other stuff.
Of course.
It's an equalizer. It literally destroys, teams.
Yeah.
So maybe it's just a mental thing we need to get out of our heads about. Like, okay, he's not this dominant, physical specimen.
Right.
Kind of get out of our head, I guess, at this point now that things are different now.
Yeah. I think that's a big part of it. Is like he seems approachable in a way those other guys did not. Like Kareem was surly, Wilt was surly, Michael was larger than life and dunking on you. And for all the charm of Magic Johnson, again, it was just physically, he was like such a different animal than anything else that we'd ever seen at the point guard position. And so, like, he's just in a different strata, a different plane of existence. With Steph, it's like, oh, I can shoot threes. I can chuck him from 40 feet out. And it's like, yeah, you're not hitting him at 40%. You're not, you're not doing it off the curl like he does. You're not doing it for 40 minutes a game like he does. So it's just, but something about it just feels like approachable. Like, I remember, again, another conversation I had with Kelly Olynyk, and I asked him, it's like, because he's white, because he has longish hair and he looks like he's a reject from a Pearl Jam video, everybody's like, oh, like, random people come up to him at a Chipotle and we're like, I bet you I could take you. And it's like, are you kidding me? There's no chance in hell that you're beating Kelly Olynyk. Yeah.
Destroy you.
What was that quote from Brian Scalabrine? I am closer to LeBron than you are closer to me. And like, he is, by his own admission, like the 450th best player in a 450 person league.
Yeah.
And yet he's closer to LeBron than the average guy, or even a good D1 college player is to Scalabrine. Like, Scalabrine's, and so there's this assumption for whatever reason that as basketball players, like, oh, I'm on the same level, especially a guy like Curry, who's like 6'3"-ish, it's like, oh, he's not an imposing physical specimen. He doesn't dunk over people. He doesn't crush people. but yet, like you said, it's a psychological thing with them, and we've seen it so many times. Like that third quarter where they go, "Okay, I'm done toying with you. I'm done playing this. I'm just gonna go on a 15-0 run and completely suck your soul out of your body and just leave you like a dried, dead husk on the floor." Right? Like that's
Put him to
exactly,
sleep. Put
yeah,
him to sleep. No,
exactly.
we have to get out of that. I know I'm the same guy as a traditionalist and all that, but
Sure.
you gotta give the guys flowers, man. The guy's incredible.
Yep.
Anyway, you're incredible as well too, Dave. Thanks for on the podcast as always, man.
Thanks.
Plug what you got going on, man.
Oh, well, right now, just still continuing to host the Locked On Heat podcast, and make sure that you continue to check that out for daily coverage of your favorite Miami Heat team. We'll be in Las Vegas in a couple of days.
You going to?
Yeah, I'm going to Summer League.
Nice.
Yeah, it's
What do you
exciting.
think about Jovic? Not Jovic.
Yeah, Jovic. Yeah, Nikola
think?
Jovic. Good gamble. Like I was not expecting that. I remember, like, even I think talking to you about it a few years ago, like covering like the draft, and there was some players from Mario Hazonia, like that year
Yeah.
that they drafted Justice Winslow. Like
Yeah.
Hazonia was like in that group there, and we heard
Mhm.
rumors that Miami was scouting them, and we're like, really? They're not scouting. They're not going to Europe. They haven't taken a European player since Sasha Danilovic. Like
That was 7 years ago. I remember that.
yeah, and so to take a guy like Jovic is like really surprising, and then you kind of see him play, and you hear them talk about him internally, and it's like they're a believer in his work ethic, and they think he's going to be a game changer. And at 6'11", with a step back three, I could see it. Like we're starting to see the foundation of what could be a really, really great player. He has to put on more muscle.
Yes. That's the whole
He
thing,
has to, he has to get used to the speed and physicality of the NBA game. But the skill set, from what I've seen, I think is there. And I think it's just going to be a matter of time before he takes another leap and becomes a really impactful player for Miami. Not a starter this year, but an impact player. I think he'll be a rotation player, and we'll see how he goes down the road.
Could he be like as good as the guy with the K in his last name?
Uh,
I'm just joking.
No.
Amazing. That guy's amazing. Jokic.
Yeah. Yeah, that's another one. Again, that's another guy. Like not physically imposing at all. He's not crushing people with dunks and stuff like that. So it's like, oh, is he really an MVP? It's like, yeah, have you seen his numbers? Have you seen what that team is around him?
Yeah.
Especially with Jamal Murray hurt. Like that was not a very good group of NBA players. And yet he was carrying them to the playoffs, and he won MVP for a reason. So it's just interesting how we view these players, and we have preconceived ideas of what a superstar is.
And they're gonna be good next year. Denver should be back next year. They should be back. We'll see.
I agree.
Great job, Dave. Great job.
Thanks, man.